This is a talk for the short paper Benchmarking Debiasing Methods for LLM-based Parameter Estimates to be presented at EMNLP 2025. My name is Nicolas Audinet de Pieuchon from Chalmers University of Technology. Thanks for joining. So let's begin with some motivation. Many domains find it useful to run statistical analyses to examine correlations between variables. For example, by looking at the magnitude of coefficients of a logistic regression. However, often in domains such as computational social science, the data is only available as free-form text. A standard solution is to annotate the text documents by hand. These annotations are often high quality, especially when using multiple annotators, but are costly to produce at scale. Instead, researchers have started to use LLM-based classifiers to generate the annotations. This is much cheaper, but risks introducing unwanted and poorly understood biases from the LLM into the downstream analysis. To counter this, researchers have recently developed debiasing methods, which incorporate both generated annotations and a small subset of expert annotations to produce unbiased downstream models while still taking advantage of the scalability of language models. In particular, in this paper, we consider two debiasing methods: Prediction-Powered Inference, or PPI, by Angelopoulos et al., and Design-based Supervised Learning, or DSL, by Egami et al. So PPI first computes the parameter estimates from the generated annotations, and then debiases them with a rectifier R theta. The rectifier is computed from the difference of the gradients of the loss function using the expert annotations yi and the generated annotations y hat I. DSL, on the other hand, first assumes that we know the probability distribution pi of when a sample is selected for expert sampling. Then it constructs a debiased outcome y tilde, which is equivalent to expert annotations under expectation, and adjusts the statistical analysis using y tilde and its moment function. These recent advancements, though, lead to some questions. Firstly, since we have to produce expert annotations anyway, when is it preferable to use the scalable debiasing methods over just performing the statistical analyses with the expert annotations? Additionally, what are the performance differences between the debiasing methods? To answer these, we conduct two experiments. In our first experiments, we varied the proportion of samples which were expert annotated. The goal is to answer the question, given a fixed number of samples, how many of them should I annotate by hand to observe significant benefits from the debiasing methods? In the second experiment, on the other hand, we keep the number of samples with expert annotations fixed and vary the number of samples with generated annotations. This setup targets scenarios where we have limited resources for annotation, but the data is abundant. How much additional data should I annotate with language models? Are there diminishing returns? For both experiments, we use a logistic regression with 4 discrete input features and an annotated binary outcome. We averaged the results across 4 datasets and 4 annotation methods, and we used a standardized RMSE score for evaluation relative to a reference model where all samples have expert annotations. So here are the results for our first experiment. As you can see, both PPI, the green line, and DSL, the orange line, outperformed just using expert annotations, the blue line, for almost all data points. Additionally, DSL seems to be more efficient than PPI at using expert samples, especially for lower proportions. However, we also observe a curious crossover effect for higher sample proportions of expert samples, where DSL performs worse than both PPI and the baseline. When splitting the data by dataset, we also noticed that while PPI remains consistent, DSL performance varies significantly by dataset. Our second experiment shows similar trends. Both PPI and DSL outperform using only expert annotations. We also observe an exponential diminishing returns for both methods as we increase the number of samples with generated annotations. In conclusion, we found that both DSL and PPI outperform using only expert annotations, and we encourage researchers to use generated annotation in their analyses. We also observed that DSL tends to outperform PPI, but that its performance is more variable. We therefore recommend reporting results from both methods until DSL's variability is better understood. So that was it, and thank you for listening.